is simply that I wasn't going to let it go.
Yeah.
And I knew that there was still a crack because I didn't get fired. I got furloughed.
Right.
So to me, I was like, oh, there's a crack.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep going. And I was like, and so I looked through what I would do if I was on, or what would I would appreciate. And I was like, probably if I was still training, when we open, I need to give them 0 reasons not to bring me back.
That's right.
So I hit Justin up, I hit you up.
That's right.
And I was like, please train me. In hindsight, I'm like, I truly don't know how she made it there. She didn't make it to her chemo appointment. She went in hospice pretty quickly. The day that my professor, shout out to her, I've also never paid her back, unfortunately, but like she bought me a flight. She found me because I didn't have Wi-Fi. So I just went to the dance studio.
What's up, coaches? Welcome to Your Coach's Coach. I am your host, Coach Justin Blackwell. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a NASM certified personal trainer, a boxing coach, as well as a father of 2, based out here in Los Angeles, California. I created this podcast to help you gain insight on how successful coaches, both established and up and coming, have navigated and continue to navigate their world of sports, fitness, and movement. You're going to hear some really raw stories and some really incredible journeys on this podcast, and I hope you find this podcast valuable, useful, and entertaining. If you do, please like, subscribe, and share. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode. First of all, for those of you who can't see us and you're tuning in, I have a very special guest today, right? This is actually near and dear to my heart because, we've had a really cool history in the past several years. So first of all, thank you to everybody tuning in. Welcome to Your Coach's Coach. I am Coach Justin, and I'm here today with Coach Lo, who is a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, and we're going to dive deep into her story. I think she has an amazing story, a piece of which I'm a part of, so I'm excited to get to that part. But as I always do on this podcast and, have done for the last, at least the first couple of episodes, I talk like I've been doing this for years, but first couple of episodes is I really like to start at the beginning, let the people who don't know you get a chance to know who you are, where you come from, and then as we kind of dive down this thing, we'll talk about kind of your journey and what makes Lo and where you're going, where you're headed, kind of that whole nine. So with that, first and foremost, thank you for showing up today. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Of course. So let's start at the beginning. Coach Lo, before Coach Lo, let's talk about Lo as a youngster, as a child. Who were you? Where did you live? How did you come up? What was life like for you on the way up?
So I guess that would even be pre my name being Lo.
Tell me something new right off the bat.
So the birth name is Lauren.
That's right.
So I'm originally from Guam. I was actually born in Atlanta. I don't even know if you knew that.
Didn't know that.
But my dad is originally from Guam, so he wanted me to grow up there. So I think we moved when I was like 3 or something along those lines. Young.
Yeah.
Like I don't know anything about it. Anytime I tell people I was born in Atlanta, I'm like, and they ask me like where, I don't know. I don't have those answers.
Yeah.
So I usually
like wherever T.I.'s from, I don't know.
Right. It's like, I like him. So I moved to Guam so I could grow up there. And again, like I think where I could say I started was on Guam.
On Guam, yeah. So you said to grow up there. Was there a reason that like you went? What was the actual purpose of going from Atlanta to Guam?
I think my dad wanted me to be more connected to like my culture because I'm half Chamorro.
Yeah.
So he really wanted me to grow up and be surrounded by it. And my mom was kind of like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
She's going to be around something that's not just like America.
Right.
That's pretty sick. And I think it was exciting for her too. And it just worked out because she worked for IBM.
Okay.
So Guam at the time had an IBM office. So she got the transfer. So it just sort of like everything sort of sorted out.
Just lined up.
Yeah. And in her mind too, like my family, so my last name is Santos and also Taitano. Okay. And those are fairly bigger families on Guam. Huh. So my mom was like, oh, she can be surrounded by.
Both Guamanian.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. She could be surrounded by like bigger family than she was more accustomed to. So in her mind, this was like a win-win. I'd be surrounded by more of a community, and I would get to know that side of myself culturally.
Yeah, for sure. And talk to me. So it's funny because we're Pacific Islanders, you know what I mean? But when I think like, you know, growing up, obviously I had a big Filipino background. And so when I think Pacific Islands, I've always just, because of my culture, thought of the Philippines, right?
For sure.
So when I met you and you were like, Guam, yeah, Pacific Island. And I was kind of thinking like, you know, it's funny because I don't know much about Guam and like the culture. And
Right.
so talk to me a little bit about it. Like
Yeah.
Chamorro, like, yeah, let me know. Like what's kind of the details of the
Yeah.
culture and what stands out to you?
Yeah, interestingly enough, there's a lot of similarities between like Filipino culture and Chamorro culture just because of like historically we had a similar history with how we were colonized. And, you know, there was a period of time where I know, you know, dating back to my Guam history, I know that like most of us were like killed off and then repopulated with people from the Philippines.
Interesting.
You know, Chamorros from other islands. So there's a lot of mix in our blood now.
Yeah.
I actually did ancestry DNA during the pandemic.
Oh,
Like,
did you?
what else was I going to do?
Right. Had a lot of time.
Yeah, and it actually pinpointed like other parts, like obviously being like having some Filipino blood in me,
Right.
and like pinpointing exactly where what province I was from.
Really?
But I think culturally, there a lot of what we're rooted in is like respect and
Right.
family. You
Absolutely.
know, like those are like the big pillars I would say when I think about Chamorro culture.
Yeah.
And that goes to elders, to people, to, you know, kids, all of the above. That's all you kind of learn when you're a kid. Like the first thing you do when you see an adult is you kiss.
Yeah.
You know, you acknowledge, you show respect.
Yeah. So in the Filipino culture, it's mano, right? Where they do the hand thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we have the same thing. Yeah,
Okay,
we have
okay.
the same thing. Yeah.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
You have to go in your uncle or auntie, especially like the older generation, like younger, maybe you like kiss on the cheek, but some is the hand.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It made me think. I went to the Philippines when I was 9 for the first time. And, you know, I'm just learning all this stuff. I'm super American, right? And so I didn't even know what day of the week it was. I was just kind of all turned around. And I remember all the kids getting up and they started monoing everybody, right? And so I got up too. I was like, you know, when in Rome, right? So, and they're all laughing at me. They're like, no, they're going to school. Like, you're staying here. You don't need to do that right now. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just like, oh, all right.
Like, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I was giving it my best effort.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So talk to me a little bit about just growing up there. I know that you did dance. Did that start in Guam? Or?
Yeah, it did.
Okay.
I was a pretty like accident prone child, but I was like a physical child at the same time. Like I loved, my house was at the time was like one of the first houses in the area that we were in. There was like one other house and the rest was just like jungle.
Oh, snap.
And so I had like this big obsession with Pocahontas.
Okay.
So I would just like run through the jungle thinking I was Pocahontas. And like prior to that would like try to play sports, but was like thoroughly not good at.
Really?
Like,
What sports did you try?
I would try. This would just be like outside, like,
Just like everything.
basketball,
Right.
you know, so like just anything that was like physical that normally kids will play outside because
Yeah.
that's, you know, back then that's what we did.
That's what we did.
That's
No
what
cell
we did.
phones out there.
We played outside.
Right.
I was not a big video game girl.
Right.
Like even when I got older, was not good at it. So I played outside, but I was like I would always get hurt. Like I've broken like 4 bones, I think.
Okay.
Before the age of 14.
Oh, snap.
So my mom put me in dance, nonetheless, I think to like learn some coordination.
Yeah.
And then it just sort of like took off from there. And I, you know, got to the point, I think it was like age 8 or 9, I auditioned for the like competition team.
Yeah.
And made that. And so
What kind of dance was it at that time?
mostly jazz.
Okay.
But we would do, it kind of was at the time, it was mostly jazz, rooted in jazz, but my studio was very good at bringing people from the mainland,
Yeah.
mainland being America, for those that don't
Right.
know. That's what we call it. Bringing to Guam. So like it sometimes would be the style of which they did.
Right.
So we kind of did a myriad of things, but I would say the root of what we trained in at the time was jazz.
Okay. And so when you think of like, I'm not from the dance world, but jazz dance, what exactly does that mean? Like, how would you describe that style of dance?
Very technical. How do I describe that?
All I know is like
the way
hip hop, right? And like
ballet.
And ballet.
So usually the way I would say it to someone who has like maybe no frame of dance, I would say like think ballet but parallel. So like
Right.
you notice like ballet is like very turned out. Like you see a lot of like outward rotation, and
Right.
jazz is mostly parallel.
Okay.
Usually a bit sharper movement, faster movement, isolations. It would be the similar like technical standpoint that you'd see in ballet with like turns and this, but it's parallel.
Okay.
So that was always the way that I would say it. I don't even want to say faster pace because obviously like ballet will be faster, but like from a musical standpoint, like newer age jazz, it's like more popular music.
Understood.
That you would see it with.
Okay.
That wasn't hip hop.
Okay. And obviously, you know, this is your coach's coach, so we're talking through coaching. So one of the things that fascinates me, like I just had Shark Strong on, you know, for the first episode, and he talked a lot about like his swimming and what that training was like. So I imagine that dance was really kind of your first formal introduction to like a training program and what that regimented lifestyle looks like. And it always fascinates me because, you know, I have two boys, right? And I train, well, at least one of them so far. And so that fascinates me, right?
Yeah.
Just like where people come from in terms of like their first introduction to being trained and guided in some type of movement. So talk to me a little bit about kind of what that life of being trained as a young dancer. And you're how old at this time, roughly?
I guess if we started when I got to the competition team, I was like 9.
Okay. Yeah. Talk to me about what that life was like as a 9-year-old low in Guam, going through training as a competitive dancer.
I mean, it was intense. Like, honestly, like that was like our job.
Right.
And to this day, I'm kind of like, how did they get us to do that? Actually, at age 9.
You didn't know any better, right?
No,
It's just kind
I
of
was like, oh, because I remember, I think like the earlier dance days before I was on the comp team, it was like maybe I was dancing once a week, right? And then, you know, I got to intermediate, maybe that was like twice a week. And then I got to the competition team and it was like 3-4 times a week, you know, and then we were also like performing a lot. Too on the island, and
kind of like recreationally or like exhibition style, right?
Correct. So we'd have our technique days, and then we'd have you know, also like really intense periods of time because again we'd bring choreographers in and they would have like a sort of like a residency with us for even just like a few weeks, but they'd have to teach us sometimes like up to like 4 dances minimum, you know.
You're talking about like routines, like oh wow.
Yeah, that we would use for competition. So then that would be like a really intense time of like longer rehearsals, longer practices, weekends. And I think I really have to highlight the fact that like we performed everywhere also on Guam. Like if there was a first birthday party, we were there performing. If there was a christening, we were there. If there was a 16th birthday party, we were performing.
Like you were the local team we
were like the main, we were called Skip Entertainment Company.
Okay.
And we were like the main team at the time. There's been many other great groups that have come
Do they still
since.
exist?
Yeah, they
Shout
still
out to
exist.
Skip Entertainment Company.
Oh my gosh, they are incredible. These kids are so much better than I was.
Really, they evolved, huh?
They're so good, and they've kind of evolved, I think, a little bit more towards like hip hop and commercial dance.
Right.
But they're top notch, top notch dancers, and some of the hardest working dancers because of just the nature of how Terry Knapp, she's the one that started the company.
Okay.
And again, like I don't know how she got us to do so many of the things that she got us to do, but I mean, it really was like I'd have like 3-4 shows in a weekend, and I'd be rehearsing and dancing during the weekdays. So it didn't really give me a lot of time to do other things. Yeah. But I was so locked in because the competition trips were so cool.
Yeah. Okay. I was just gonna ask, like at this point, you know, was it a passion? Was it like something you enjoyed doing at that time?
Yeah, it was a mixture. I think I was like definitely. Even though I was like kind of a shy kid, I loved performing. Like I loved being on stage, and I always felt like that's where I like had to be. Right. You know, and when we got to do competition, you got to then do that on the mainland or wherever else we'd go. You know, we'd be gone for like 6 weeks at a time because Guam is very far. So we'd, you know, plan the whole summer essentially to go from one competition, have maybe a few things in between, to go straight to the next competition. So you're literally on the road flying for almost the whole summer, and then you go back home.
And where were these competitions at? Like,
we went everywhere. We went in Canada. We went to other parts in the U.S. Like some of the main ones I want to say was like Myrtle Beach was one that we did a lot of repeats. We went to Europe. We went to Italy.
So this is really like an experience as a child.
Yes.
Wow. So yeah, because I'm thinking, okay, it's like your dance team, and you said obviously you performed locally, but you guys are traveling essentially internationally. Yeah. At roughly the age of 9 to
till I probably left when I was like 15, 16.
Oh, wow. So this is a good chunk of time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you're dancing. You obviously have a rigorous like life schedule. Sounds like you enjoyed it. But you said about 15 you left.
I left that company because then I wanted to focus on ballet because I hadn't really done that. We did it a little bit,
Okay.
but
So this is just a style transition essentially that you were looking for.
And there wasn't a lot of studios at the time.
Right.
So there was like the competition studio and then there was like the ballet studio, you know? And I didn't actually know if I really wanted to dance past high school.
Right.
But I thought if I was going to, I should probably learn that because it seemed like all these kids knew it very well.
Right.
So, and you know what it was actually? I went and I randomly like took a class because my cousin was in the ballet studio. She was like, had been there the same amount of time I had been in Skip. She had been, they were called Body Arts.
Okay.
She had been there and we'd always go watch each other's shows. It was like the thing that we always did.
Nice.
And I took a class and I was like, wow, I suck.
Right. You realize like, I need to learn some new things.
I was like, I really suck at this. I really got to get better at this. And then I just like found myself taking like 9 ballet classes a week.
Wow.
Just for the sake of taking it.
Right. Not even competition wise, just
No,
just because you enjoyed the new thing.
Yeah, and they had a performance team too, and they asked me to audition for it. I remember I did, but I really wasn't interested. I was just interested in training because I had already done the performance team, and to me it was really hard to let go of to me that was the highest level of like how I could have done it, and nothing would match it.
Right.
So if I wasn't going to do that there, then I wasn't going to do it here. And it was no offense to them. It was just, if I came here to train, I was just focusing on training.
Right. And talk to me a little bit, because you mentioned obviously competition. What was competition like at that age? Like what does a dance competition consist of? And then what did you learn about yourself just in competition at that age?
Oh my gosh, competition days are wild. You get up at like 5 a.m. to get your hair done, your makeup done.
Wow.
Like I found old pictures of me just like, because also my hair was so very straight. So in order to, I had to sleep in curlers. I had to wake up early. They'd have to like make sure my hair stayed. Everyone had to have all your costumes laid out. Sometimes your first dance would be at like 7 in the morning. You'd have to compete at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
So you get to the convention center. It's like dancers everywhere. You kind of have like your pod. You find your space that you practice on, like carpet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Were there rivals in this thing? Like, did you guys have like a rival?
You know what? I feel like we didn't have that. We had I think there was one studio that, I want to say it was Larkin.
Okay.
I think we had one studio that we were like a little competitive with,
Yeah.
but not really, because we were so like out of the mix.
Right.
Like people knew who we were when we came, because I mean, it's like, what studio was from Guam?
Right.
You know, so like, and we were pretty obvious, you know,
Right.
because like we had I would say the most amount of range and looks and ethnicity, because we had everything.
Right,
you know?
right.
And we also usually had the largest amount of guys.
Oh, really?
Which was really interesting. So I think we stood
interesting.
out because of that too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I know a little bit about dance, but I know dance can be very competitive, especially,
gosh,
you know,
yes.
in LA. I've heard of people on dance teams, and they're always talking about this dance studio and that dance studio, and you're kind of like, oh, I didn't know.
I think it was a blessing and a curse for us, because we didn't have that.
Yeah.
You know, we just kind of came in to do what we knew how to do.
Right.
And our main thing was like, we worked the hardest.
Right.
Is all we, because in some ways we always felt like we were behind.
Yes.
Like all the tricks that people knew to do,
Mm-hmm.
we would then go and we'd do it the following summer, you know, type of thing. So,
Right.
and you know, we didn't have the same access that the kids have now. We
Right.
find those things out in person.
Right.
So, again, like I think that we were always the hardest working studio there, and to the point, like, I mean, we were usually one of the last studios to leave. We'd still be practicing, we'd still be cleaning, we'd still be fixing things, tweaking things.
Yeah. Did you as a team feel that sense of urgency? Like, we have to, like, everybody kind of knew
everyone,
that?
there was a good rhythm at one point that we were all on that same page.
Yeah.
Especially, there was this one, he was like a previous studio kid who was one of the first, if not only now, kids who have gotten into Juilliard.
Oh, wow.
And so he had come back to teach us.
Wow.
And it was around that time that we started getting a little more technical, started doing like dances that were doing really, really well. We started really advancing in these competitions, and people were really starting to take note of us. So it got even more serious, because we were like, oh, I think we're like good, actually.
Right. I love that.
And we were getting a lot of recognition for that. And so I think when that started to happen, our training like turned up like tenfold.
Just another notch, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, you talked about like obviously the culture of like Guam, and So I imagine this student coming back was probably a pretty big deal, right? He gets to
Yeah.
Juilliard and comes back. I
Yeah,
imagine
he
that
danced
turned
with
everybody up.
Baryshnikov, which is like unheard of. You
Yeah.
know,
He
like
gets into what? What is that?
he danced with Baryshnikov. He's like one of the most famous like male ballet dancers
Okay.
in history. He was also on Sex and the City.
Okay.
I don't know if you watch that show.
I probably caught a half an episode here or there.
Yeah, maybe I'll send you the episodes that he was on.
Of course.
So yeah, when he came to Guam, it was like this big deal.
Yeah.
And I know I looked at him and was like, oh my God, I want to go to Juilliard.
Yeah.
I did not have the same facility to go do that, but I was like, that's the life I want to do.
Yeah. I mean, I can just imagine, right? You're on Guam, and like, obviously I'd never lived on an island like that. But as you said, like, you refer to the States as the mainland. I hear this when I went to Hawaii, right? At the Philippines is very much the same. And so to have somebody come back and give you that game that they learned in the States in the mainland seems like it would be just a huge deal.
Yeah, and he changed the way we trained too.
Right.
Like he really
Shout out to him.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I don't even know where he is at now, but yeah, I think he framed what I think of as hard work and what I think of as like how you should train for things.
Yeah, understood. Okay, so you're going into ballet now, and you're kind of just doing this mostly as a passion project. It sounds like, right?
Yeah.
You're just training and loving it. So take me through what happens next.
Yeah, I just did that it was pretty much my senior year of high school. So I then like decided to audition for places like Juilliard and these like big high-end dance programs.
Yeah.
After at the time probably like sent my audition video when I've been doing ballet for like 5 months
Right.
or something like that.
What's the goal at this point, like for you in your mind?
I don't think I really knew, to be honest. I think I was like, yeah, I think I want to dance. I don't really feel like I had a lot of guidance in regards to like whether I go to college or not.
What is my potential trajectory?
Yeah, I didn't
here?
even know what that was supposed to be. The only thing when I was a kid, my mom talked to me about being a lawyer because I was so argumentative. I would always make a case. I think I like argued how we played a game wrong, even though she taught me the game.
Right.
And then we had to replay until I won. So she was like, "You should be a lawyer."
Yeah. She's like, you know how to state your case. Like,
yeah, she was like, "You won that."
Yeah.
I was like, "Thank you," but yeah, I submitted to those places. I obviously did not get in.
Right.
Just because of sheer lack of experience.
Right.
And then I got into the University of Hawaii.
Okay.
And was like, I'm going to go to school for business.
Right.
And that was my plan.
Okay.
But then I only took dance classes. So.
So you ended up going to university UH. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you've told me that at one point.
Yeah.
But talk to me about that time. What was college like?
College was dope. I loved it. Yeah.
Especially in Hawaii.
I mean, I had no complaints.
Right.
It was perfect because it was like similar to Guam.
Yeah.
I had friends that went, and I felt like I was like in a faster paced Guam.
Right. Is Hawaii faster? Like,
you know what?
lifestyle-wise?
Actually, I don't even think it's faster, but in my mind, it was like bigger.
Yeah.
And there was like taller buildings, and and it was just super exciting. I didn't stay in the dorm, so it was really just like with my Guam friends. There's always anyone from Guam, if anyone actually listened to this, will agree with me. When you go to college, you end up going to like the Guam houses or like stay in your little Guam bubble.
For sure.
Rarely do you really branch out. There's like a few people that get accepted into the Guam bubble.
Right.
But for the most part, you stay with your Guam people.
Yeah, it's the birds of a feather thing.
Yeah,
right? It just happens. Yeah.
But it was cool. I mean, I again didn't take any business classes like I said I would,
Right.
and I took only dance classes. And I started taking modern. I had never taken modern before, which is like, it felt like jazz, but more like grounded.
Right.
Whereas like jazz was very like lines, this technical. Modern felt a bit like that, but a bit freer.
Right.
And then I got awarded to do a study abroad in London.
Nice.
And that's where I really was like, oh, maybe I want to dance for real.
Right.
Even though I probably should have known that because I was only taking dance classes.
Yeah.
And swimming.
Right.
So I went to London and was exposed to even more like outlets of dance.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, it's so funny because I think as I listen to you, right, it's really this concept of if you knew better, you do better, right? And so like every time, somebody comes back from the mainland, they teach you things, you guys elevate, right?
Yeah.
You go to Hawaii, you have this new experience, you elevate. Go to Europe, new experience, you elevate, right? So that seems like a kind of a reoccurring theme for you. It's just like the more you kind of intentionally put yourself into new positions, you kind of
I was like a
started
constant sponge.
Yeah.
And I think I still kind of actually do that.
Oh no, that's very much who you are.
Yeah, I actually just
and I brought that
connected
up because that will come to fruition later, right?
Yeah, I was like, actually, I think I'm still like that.
Yeah, for sure. And you guys will get to know a lot more about how I met Lo and why I pinpointed that out, because that's very much who she is. But you go to Europe. Mm-hmm. How long were you out there for?
Just for a semester, so like 4 months max.
Okay. And so at what juncture now, I know you ended up in New York sometime. Is that shortly after this, or how? Like,
I still had a year after in school.
Okay.
And it got a little extended. I lost my mom like right when I came back from London.
Okay.
And so things got, and also like the curriculum I was doing in London, I didn't necessarily need the credits.
Right.
So I already knew that I was basically going to do like almost an additional year or half a year.
Yeah.
Give or take, because of it. And then things got a little delayed too, because I was supposed to like do summer school and ended up not being able to do that because of my mom.
Right.
So some of the credits got, pushed back.
Yeah. And, in the time that I've known you, I've obviously heard you mention kind of your mom in that story. And if you don't want to, you never, open book. I know you are. But can you talk me a little bit through that time and kind of not only what happened, if you're okay with that, but also just kind of what that did for you and kind of your journey, because that's a big life-shifting moment, right, for any person. So I'm just curious a little bit, kind of like what happened and how did that kind of alter your trajectory, if it did?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely did.
Yeah.
I would say it definitely did. So it's interesting because I was in London and there was a girl who essentially we did a swap. So she went to Hawaii and like stayed in the dorm, but like my mom would like check in with her because my mom was staying with me at the time.
Yeah.
'Cause she had just lost her dad, my grandpa.
Right.
And she just kind of needed somewhere to be. We had sold our house on Guam.
Yeah.
And I was like, come stay in Hawaii. Like, it's
Come
beautiful
hang out.
here.
It's nice here.
Come hang out. I'm going to be in London. Like, you can have a room to yourself. Like, and so they would always have dinner. And she started messaging me saying that my mom was like, regularly unwell, which I was like, okay, like it's just maybe in my mind I was like, maybe she just kind of like wanted a night to herself, to be honest, and like she's just saying she's unwell.
Right.
But when I came back, like literally the night I got back, she had significantly lost a ton of weight.
Oh no.
So that was a big red flag for me.
Of course.
We were struggling financially, very like at this point. Like I think we couldn't even like buy pizza.
Right.
I don't know what her financial place was because she wasn't super open about it.
Yeah.
I obviously didn't have money.
Right.
I had jobs but not money.
Right.
But she just progressively, she stayed with me and she progressively kept like losing weight, not being well, refused to go to the doctor, it was always a battle because it's like medical bills, whatever, you know. Pretty positive she didn't have insurance, so that was a lot of it because she had basically retired from IBM, so she didn't have that job anymore.
Right.
And she was looking for another job. And around the time of like Mother's Day, it started to get really bad. And the day after Mother's Day, her skin was like yellow, and we just had to take her because it just looked like
Yeah, you're just like, we got to go at this point.
Things were failing, yeah.
For sure.
So we go. She was like 90 pounds when we brought her in, which is wild. And throughout the whole process, I like didn't even realize it at the time, but our roles had switched.
Right.
She was kind of my rock, and I know I've told you like my dad was not really super around, so it was always us two. I depended on her for absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And it was kind of the scariest thing to see her need me.
Right.
She would like scream my name. If they had me go wait in the lobby to go do some tests or whatever, she would scream for me if I wasn't there. And it was so scary, but I also felt this like weird strength that I needed to have.
Yeah, it was an instinct for you.
Yeah,
right?
like I was like, I need to be this for her because she's always done this for me. I need to be able to do this job well.
Right.
I don't know how to do this job. But I need to do this job well. And one of those things was like, I can't cry in front of her. I can't, not be here. Anytime I like was feeling a certain type of way, I had some really good friends that would come see her too. My friend Drea came to see her. My boyfriend at the time would sit with her, and he was like a goof. So he would make her laugh all the time.
Yeah.
So every once in a while he'd come sit with her and they'd like force me to leave.
Right.
And I would just go sit at the beach and wait till I could go back.
Yeah, I imagine you had to be processing a lot at that point, or were you not? Were you kind of just in it at that
I kind of
juncture?
just felt like I was numb. Like I didn't really, because no one talked to us about, I knew they basically told me she had pancreatic cancer, but they didn't tell me, like, I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah, what is that, right? Yeah.
I didn't know. I knew what I seen in shows and in movies, like, there's stages. I think at one point, I only saw an oncologist twice come in. The rest were like nurses aides.
Yeah.
And I tried to ask. I remember I tried to ask, like, what stage. I didn't even know what questions to ask, right?
Right.
And the guy was like, oh, well, cancer's cancer. We'll get her through tests and then, hopefully get her into chemo. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Like,
what year is this, by the way?
This was in 2010.
2010. Okay. Yeah, because I'm wondering, I'm like, obviously as the years go by, information and knowledge about cancer and
my gosh,
cancer,
yeah.
like constantly, obviously progresses, but I can imagine you trying to figure out what's happening and the doctor isn't informing you. I mean, that's a crazy
I've never
space to be
felt
in.
more confused and more like, let me do the things I know how to do. So if she was like hungry, she couldn't eat real food. She could have Jello.
Right.
I would be like 0 to 100 on getting her Jello.
Right.
Because I was like, I don't know how to help you with anything else. I would massage her feet, and they told me I couldn't do that anymore.
Oh, wow.
So like certain things, I was like, okay, I can control getting her fucking Jello.
Right. You're like, I'm in charge of this. Like, that's my mission.
Yeah. And I would stay up all night because she had to have meds every 2 hours. Otherwise, she was in like insane amounts of pain.
Right.
So I would play Sudoku and watch Friends all night.
Right.
So that I didn't miss it because they would forget about her.
Right.
And she would wake up crying and like trying to press any sort of call button. So I would like stay up, make sure that she got it. And then they let me take her home at one point, which I learned later they shouldn't have.
Right.
And I had to be the one that did it for her. So same thing, I would just be on this like air mattress because we had to give up the apartment because we couldn't afford it anymore. I would stay on this air mattress, gave her the bed, and I would just wait and just make sure she was good.
Yeah.
Like all night.
Yeah. And like you said, your roles at that juncture really switched. And I'm just thinking as you're talking, right, like illness is such an interesting thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like you said, you can watch somebody, you can leave one day, they look perfectly fine, and then all of a sudden you're watching them deteriorate. And we're so used to a traditional illness, right? Like having a cold or flu, and you kind of just get better. So I imagine at this juncture, you're just waiting for that moment, like, is she going to get better? And you're trying to figure out this process of like, what does that even look like, right?
And I had no idea. And my mom's sister, at one point pulled me aside, and she was like the first person to have said this to me, and I was so mad at her. But she was like, you should probably be prepared that your mom is going to die.
Right.
And I was like, I don't know, am I allowed to cuss?
Go ahead.
Okay. I just said, fuck you.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I'm busting my ass to make sure she doesn't die. How are you going to stand there and tell me that I should be prepared for her to die?
Yeah, you're basically in the fight of it.
Yeah.
Not
I'm
quitting.
like, you're not going to help?
Yeah.
Like, do you not have hope? I know what she looks like. I know what they're saying. Or actually, I don't know what they're saying because no one's telling me anything.
Right.
But at the very least, I'm going to try.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, my grandma was a nurse's aide in Chicago at a hospital. So she had a connection there when my mom finally let me tell her. And
she was keeping it a secret.
Yeah, she didn't want her to know. My mom was a very proud person. I get that from her as well. But she finally tells her because it was bad, right? Yeah. So we needed the connect. We didn't have the money, so like we needed it. So they cleared her to fly to Chicago. We couldn't afford for me to go, so my auntie came to go get her. They flew. I stayed in Hawaii, which was like and then I had to go to summer school. It was like the shittiest feeling ever because I was like, why am I even here? She was, she got to Chicago. The doctors were like, I don't even know why she got cleared to fly.
Right.
Surprised she survived.
Yeah, I was
the
even
flight.
As you said it, I was thinking, I was like, dang, she flew, which is you don't think about it, but it's tremendous trauma on the body.
Yeah, and just think like she had to have meds every 2 hours. She had to there's so many things that could have gone wrong.
Yeah.
And even when the last time I saw her, I mean, she couldn't walk.
Right.
So it's like, in hindsight, I'm like, I truly don't know how she made it there. She didn't make it to her chemo appointment. She went in hospice pretty quickly. The day that my professor, shout out to her, I've also never paid her back, unfortunately, but she bought me a flight. She found me because I didn't have Wi-Fi, so I just went to the dance studio. She found me like looking at flights that I couldn't afford. She bought me a flight the day I was going. My mom passed, like as I was going there.
Wow. So literally like on the way or like?
I was driving to the airport. My friend Drea was driving me to the airport, and my auntie called me 3 times, and I didn't even pick up right away because I just like knew. I knew why she called me.
You felt it. Wow. I mean, I can't even imagine going through that. But like, talk to me a little bit about, so what happens immediately after that? Like what, like in terms of you and, you know, again, how that kind of altered the next stages? Because again, that's a big moment.
Yeah.
Obviously.
I think I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to, like, I was like, okay, I have to finish school, so I'll get through that.
Right.
Okay. I'm still dancing, so I'm going to get through that too.
Yeah.
Everything sort of felt like I was on, you know, those, they had them at water parks where it's like it was like a ladder thing you had to run across.
Yeah, exactly.
And hopefully not fall,
Yeah,
you know? That's how I felt.
Right.
Like, for years.
Yeah, I can imagine you're trying to, like, basically in your mind, you're thinking, okay, I just have to continue on what I'm doing, but there's this whole piece that's missing now of life.
And I felt so like I didn't know anything about money. I didn't know anything because my mom really didn't didn't really teach me those things.
Yeah.
So I was like, I have credit card people calling me every day because apparently she owed money and I don't have any money.
Yeah, you think that's cultural? I think because I think my mother's very much the same way. Like now I'm at a stage with her where I can talk a little bit more, but it's not. It's almost like such a guarded secret.
I think it was an old school thing.
It's just an old school thing, I think, right?
Like, this is the parent job. I'll teach you when you're ready.
Yeah, you don't need to know my finances. I pay for it anyways.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. Like that. You know, she never talked about it.
Yeah.
And like a lot of things she never talked about. Like I didn't even know she was married before my dad, you know, like she did a lot of really dope shit before my dad, you know.
Really?
So a lot of things I found out after she passed, that was really cool. But to stay on track with your question, I remember like when I was with her, I just started feeling like, I was like, I just gotta be like good. I gotta be okay, because she had asked me so many times, like, are you good? Are you okay? And she would stress if I was like not okay.
Yeah.
And so I started to have this habit being like, Mom, I figured this out, even though I hadn't. Mom, I figured out how to pay for my last year of college. No, I hadn't.
Right.
But like I just started telling her things that like I had done and that I was figuring out and I was okay.
Yeah. Both of you being really selfless to each other though, right?
Yes.
She's in pain, trying to figure out if you're okay, right? You're trying to make sure she's okay, and so you have to tell her something that makes
even
her
though I'm
feel...
literally like in shambles, being like, I actually don't know I'm gonna eat tomorrow. Like, you know.
Yeah.
But I kind of just kept that theme going. And it took me, the reason why I chose New York was because she always wanted me to go there.
Right.
So my original intention was I thought I wanted to go back to Europe because they had a dope master's program. But I switched gears and I was like, you know what? New York is as good as any.
Yeah.
I'm going to go there. I got myself to Vegas. My dad was fairly present at this point. So, you know, I went to go see him there. They helped me get to New York. I had 2 giant suitcases and that's all I had. I got to New York and I was like, got to get a job.
Right.
Like literally landed, went and looked for coffee shops to work at because I was just working at one in Hawaii. So I was like, I'm qualified.
Right. You're like, I know how to do that.
You should hire me. Yeah. So yeah, I think how that changed me is that it kept me running. Me running, because if I stopped, things would hurt. And if I stopped, no one would help me.
Right.
You know, in my mind. I was
right.
like,
You're thinking like there is no rescue. There's no rescue.
Yeah, it's me and me, because it was either me and my mom, and now she's not there, so now it's me. And I have to figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. So you land in New York. You immediately go get a job.
Yes.
But you're also back in school now.
I graduated.
You had graduated.
Yeah, so
okay.
I graduated.
So now
I finished the year in Hawaii,
Yeah.
and I almost didn't. But I finished the year, and then I moved to New York.
Okay. And so now what's the plan, right? Are you thinking are you going back into dance at this point? That's the goal.
Yeah, I was like, I'm going to go hard and dance.
Okay. And New York dance
Tough.
culture. And again, this isn't my world, but I've heard the rumors, right? It's a tough culture. So talk to me a little bit about just like that period of time, because obviously that'll transition us into this fitness journey, which I know started a bit in New York.
Yeah.
Maybe it started earlier than that. But
actually
I'd say
kinda did a little
boxing
bit.
journey started
Yeah,
in New York.
yeah,
But
yeah.
we'll get there. But talk to me a little bit. So you're working at the coffee shop. You're pursuing dance now. You're like, this is where I'm going.
Yeah.
So what does that part
I
of the
just
journey
hustled,
look like?
you know, because I knew how to be that person, though, because I from Guam. We always didn't know people.
Yeah.
You know, so I just kind of put myself in people's faces. I wasn't the best one in the rooms most of the time.
Right.
But I trained like I was, and I trained like I knew I was going to be. Like I had the biggest faith in myself.
Right.
That even if you didn't see me right away, you were going to see me eventually.
That's right.
So I just stayed in people's faces, and I networked, and I talked, and I was nice,
Yeah.
and I worked really, really hard. I would say if I could correct myself on anything to have done better, I could have spoke up for myself a bit more. But my work really did speak for itself to get me to the places that I was meant to dance at.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of cool stuff. Like I danced for a company I loved, with the work that I believed in that allowed me to be myself.
Yeah.
Actually, Greg,
Okay.
the Dash Ensemble.
Yeah. We him and I are lining it up.
I
We're
love
gonna
it.
talk soon.
Yeah, he was the core center of my dance career, and like the dream.
Yeah.
I didn't even know it was my dream, but it became the dream of like the dreamiest job I could have had.
That's right. Well, shout out to Greg. Lo just connected us recently. He runs a professional dance company as well as an academy for kids. So he's going to be on the podcast in the coming weeks. But shout out to him. So cool to hear that this is where that piece of the journey connects. So I know that obviously you're hustling out here. You're doing the dance thing. You're doing some amazing things. I know that in New York is when you first started boxing, and I didn't intro this. So, Lo is obviously an amazing boxing coach, amazing group instructor. The work ethic that she speaks about right now is second to none. I mean, I can say that just firsthand, and but in terms of boxing, I think the journey starts kind of in New York. Somehow you kind of happenstance just walk into a boxing gym. But can you talk to me through that piece of it?
So I, again, was dancing, and I had someone advised me to start cross training because I, in essence, like needed to lose weight. Was the underlying
Is that from
factor.
the dance pressures?
Yeah,
Understood. Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't Greg. It
Right.
wasn't Greg.
Shout out Greg.
It wasn't him. But I joined ClassPass, and I was looking at the studios, and there was a boxing gym, and I was like, that sounds dope. I want to try that. Like that feels cool. I felt like
What called you to that? What called you to boxing?
Honestly, I think I held a lot of anger, obviously, from my mom and things. I would also like to point out, I think a lot of people from Guam have that in them by itself.
Right. So warrior culture, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's it's a bit blood too. But I just saw it and I was like, that looks dope.
Right.
And so I went. It was the first place I went to was Church Street. It was underground. It's super sick. It's like an old New York boxing
just
gym.
Rustic looking.
Yeah, and it was I was like, oh, this is exactly what I envisioned.
Right.
But I got in there. They the first thing they made me do was run
right.
the Brooklyn Bridge. I think it was half of it, but in my mind it was the whole thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah, you basically ran across it if you ran half and back, right?
That's how I felt. I was like,
exactly
I don't run. Came in. I don't think anyone really taught me any punches.
Right.
But we were going straight away, hitting bags, hitting mitts. They put me in a ring, cut it in half, and I had to do something with this girl that to this day I don't know what the direction was, but I was like, I know how to do this, so I just started trying to hit her.
Right. You're like, throw hands.
Yeah, I was like, this is my ticket. I know how to do this. But I left and I was like, oh, that was sick. I have no idea what happened, but that was sick. And I just kind of kept taking boxing classes around the city. This place called Work Train Fight, and it was a little bit more boutique-y, and they actually really walked me through the punches.
A little bit more of a process.
Yeah, a little more process. I could have just signed up for an advanced class. I must have, but I just kept doing it on the side.
Yeah.
And I noticed, weirdly enough, that it was helping me in dance in other ways, like my balance, my control, my strength, my cadence.
Yeah.
Which now I get, but back then I didn't.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, I really like this. I'll keep doing it. It's the only other fitness thing I'm doing that I enjoy that's not dance.
Yeah. Is this I don't know if fitness was a part of your journey outside of dance before this, or was this really you stepping into fitness?
It was when I was stepping into fitness. I did try to audition for this bar studio, and I made it into the training group, and I sucked. I was so bad.
Okay.
Oddly, couldn't understand how they counted.
Right.
Not that I don't.
Was that a you that thing, or was that a them thing?
Well, it's a difference of when dancers hear music, they're hearing every little minute detail. We also count music in a million different ways based on what we want to do to it, right?
Yeah.
you also count up versus count down. So there was a few hurdles that, and I hadn't taken enough fitness classes at the time to even understand that, you know, what it should sound like.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of like blindly like, oh, okay, I can't count 5, 6, 7, 8. I have to count 4, 3, 2, 1. That was so hard for me.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand to me, I was like, which 4, 3, 2, 1 are you talking about?
Right.
Is it 4, 3, 2, 1 or 4 more?
3 more.
3 more.
Yeah.
Like I didn't understand. I was like, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well, I think when you talk about just movement in general, in any modality, right? So whether it's bar, it's dance, it's boxing, you're really talking about cultures.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Everything is a different culture, right? So
Yeah.
you can be teaching boxing at one gym and go to another boxing gym
It's
and
totally
have a
different.
completely different culture. So
Totally.
talk about dance going into bar, or bar into boxing. I mean, I can imagine that there's
Yes.
always these hurdles, and they're hard to transition
Yeah.
into for a lot of people, you know?
Yeah. So I let the fitness dream go for a second in New York because I was like, clearly I'm not good at
You're
it.
like, I'm good off
I'll
that.
just keep taking fitness. And then I moved to LA and I was like, I was only working at fitness places, front desk.
Yeah.
And I kept seeing the instructors come in and I was like, man, it looks kind of cool to like be them. Not that I don't love doing front desk, but it looks kind of cool to be them. They seem to have this like star quality
Right.
that at this point I was like starting to transition out of dance
Right.
that I so craved, like this like performance thing that
Yeah.
I was still what I really was craving.
Right.
Which I don't think I've ever really admitted that I missed that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I imagine, you know, like you said, in dance, it sounded like that was really your place of like peace, where you felt like at liberty to kind of do what you do. It was on that podium or on that stage, right? So I can imagine that transition out of that, like very much just like when, you know, you lost your mother. It's like a big piece of you is now
Yeah.
missing. So, you know, how do you replace that? Sounds like fitness was the next step
Yeah.
in that direction. So you're working at a front desk. Can you say where?
So I worked at a few places. I worked at Prevail Boxing. I worked at Barry's Boot Camp.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
right. And so now you're looking at the coaches.
Yeah.
You're seeing the star quality, as you
Yeah.
say. What is the next step into this journey?
I just started applying places.
Yeah.
You know, most things said you need to have 2 years of group fitness experience. You have this, you know, have a certification, whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck it, I'm going to apply anyways. So I just started setting my stuff out because I was like, I have a BFA in dance. I took kinesiology.
Right.
Pretty close. So I just sent it out. And it was really weird because in my first year of being in LA, I was still contracted with some things in New York. So I was kind of going back and forth.
Okay.
And it was like my maybe my second to last trip coming back to LA from New York. And I was like, I don't think I can maintain this going back and forth because it was really on my dollar.
Right.
So I was like, I don't think I can do that. And I remember I landed in LA as I was thinking of that. And this place called Lit Method was like, we'd love to accept you into our training program. And I was like, oh my gosh.
The door's open.
There we go. I literally opened, I remember I was sitting on the plane. I opened my email and I was like, dope.
Yeah,
Let's go.
Yeah, well, if that isn't like an omen as to like your path, right? It's literally you fly off this plane, you're telling yourself, I don't even know if I can do this anymore. And
Yeah.
like, as soon as you open up the email, it's there. So Lit Method, you're teaching now.
Yep.
And what are you doing over there in terms of like teaching? What is your?
It was so it was low impact. Stood for low impact training, but
Okay.
it was like high intensity. So it was like water rowers, TRX, everything resistance based. It's evolved now, or I guess the in studio is no longer there. But it was all about it being low impact, but a high intensity workout. So you
Okay.
get the same high that you would get at like a Barry's, but
Right.
you know, without the pain.
Okay.
Essentially.
And you said they're not around anymore. Or?
The physical studio, I don't think so. I think it literally just closed, but I think they still have on demand. And I know that they essentially during the pandemic like pivoted and created like a strength rower that they piloted, where it was like a roller with things attached.
Right.
I wasn't on board for that, but it seems like they just sort of started like moving into like the technology and the not necessarily the workout.
Yeah, for sure. So you obviously mentioned the pandemic. So this is, I think, the perfect segue,
Yeah.
obviously. So let me kind of set this up, right? So I think it's 19 at this point.
Yeah.
You know, I'm in management, you know, for Box Union, my former company, right? And they basically tell me we have this coach who wants to, you know, wants to come to become a coach. You know, and my job at that point was to basically check for boxing, you know, make sure they can do their thing, you know, and make sure they were good to go, right? Pass to the other side before they hit the training program. So Lo comes in, I meet her. Actually, the first time I met you, you took a class of mine, I think, right?
Yep, I took your
So you took a class of mine, and then we ended up doing some like private training sessions, that whole nine. And I'll let her dive a little bit more into the details of this, but let's just say she busts her ass coming to these private training sessions, which she's not getting paid for. No. So she's doing that on her dollar. Of course, you know, I'm teaching her. She's an amazing student. Goes all the way through this training program that we have, finally makes it in, is the only girl in the training program, with these two savage gentlemen who we're still connected to today and still have chats with, great dudes. But she's the only woman. So, you know, the training program, I'll let her dive a little bit into that and what that consisted of at the time. But anyways, as soon as she gets accepted, like the week you get accepted as like you're a coach now on the roster, we shut down for the pandemic. Right. And then we end up doing all this training and stuff. So I don't want to, you know, overstate it for you, but talk to me a little bit about that time, because it was such a unique period. Again, I got to just first meet you and start to learn kind of your work ethic. But talk me through that time. Like, what was going through your mind? I think what I really want to understand is like why you pursued it so hard and what was kind of the goal for you, and how did you kind of maneuver through that time period as we went? So yeah, talk me through it.
Yeah. So such a good question. It was actually really cool that we're talking, because the main reason why I was like gun-ho on working here was a lot you.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Because interestingly enough, so I had left Lit. I was working for also a dance agency for a second, and I was looking for another place to teach. I had tried box union once, I think the year before, and I was like, I wasn't super into it.
Right.
And then I decided to give it another look. I had looked at Crew Box, and then I was like, let me go check out Box Union again, right? So I went, took your class, and at the end, those of you who have never taken Justin Goldmine's class, he does these incredible speeches and stories, and I was like, this is everything I want to do.
Right.
Like, the class was dope, of course. Music's dope. We love it.
That's right.
The class was dope. It was the end. It was the fact that, like, also in looking at you, if I were to saw you on the street, I wouldn't be like, oh, he probably teaches group fitness.
Right.
That's number one.
Yeah.
I would believe you taught boxing, but I would not believe you taught boxing like that.
Right.
So it was interesting to me that you did.
Yeah.
I was like, that's one. Then when we got to the end, I was like, oh, you can actually, like, help people here.
Right.
That's sick.
Yeah.
I want to do that. So that's kind of why I was like, you guys need to hire me. I need to do this, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And that's why I busted so hard. I also thought I was like so good at boxing at that time. I look at old videos and I was like, not that I didn't have something there, but it wasn't as like.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I still look at videos from 2 years ago and I'm like,
I was like, low.
we got work to do.
What were you? Anyways. So yeah, to what you said, we went through the training program. I was actually with three guys.
Oh, that's right. That's right. It was
three
Matt.
Guys. Yeah, Matt.
That's right. Okay.
C. Marty and Steph.
Yeah.
All three incredible athletes.
Incredible athletes, like a runner, former D1 basketball player.
Yeah, one former like Jets player. I'm pretty sure he was. Yeah. And they don't do this anymore. But the first week at Box Union was a physical week. We had to run the Santa Monica stairs. I was not actually in shape at all, like zero.
Yeah, yeah.
Every day was a workout of some sort. Yeah. I was the bottom of the bunch for pretty much all of it.
Hey, but she held her own, though. I will say that.
I was not going to give up. That's right. For sure. Yeah. And then the following week we learned the class, and I knew, because I knew I was like, and it kind of takes me back to dance. Like, I knew I wasn't good at that yet. Right. I was like, but I'm going to clean up in the teaching.
That's right.
Because I was like, I'm going to study. I'm going to get it. I knew I was going to be hopefully the best on the mic. You know, I was like, I made sure that I pulled up there, because I was like, that was pretty sad in the first week. Yeah. Got to work on that.
Yeah. Hold on, I got to interrupt you here because something popped into my mind real quick. So obviously, you know, we used to do videos for educational purposes. And one of the big sticks that you post on your Instagram, right, was like you constantly moving in the back. Yeah. Right? And so the reason I bring that up is because I noticed that when I first met Lo, we'd be in the training program, and all of a sudden you see like a leg just like hit like. You'd see a leg like hit like the bag, and she'd be like doing this weird like dance stretch, and I would just be like, huh. I'd be like, that's what she does. Like, you know what I mean? But since I've met you, that was kind of.
I've been like that since I was a kid. My dance teachers used to yell at me for it. He's like, will you ever keep still? Yeah. We're having this serious talk.
Yeah, and you're like, why?
I'm like, just staying warm. Just staying ready. Like, just can't keep still. No chill. But yeah, so my first week where I, did all this work. We had the practice class, friends and family class. We shut down, and I was like, well, I'm fired.
Right.
I'm 1,000% fired. There's
Yeah.
no way I'm keeping my job.
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic was such I guess what they would call like a black swan event. I remember people asking me like, do you think we're going to close? I was like, there is no
Yeah,
way.
I remember us all saying that.
Yeah, and then a day later, they were like, yeah, we're
So
closed.
we're actually closed. Don't worry, it's only for a few weeks.
Yeah. But I think the big thing about that piece of like your story, right? And obviously I know this very well, is that you didn't stop pursuing, right? So talk me through like your mindset at that point of like there's no way I'm letting this go, because that's what it felt like to me, right? So talk me a little bit through that.
It's simply that I wasn't going to let it go.
Yeah.
And I knew that there was still a crack, because I didn't get fired. I got furloughed.
Right.
So to me, I was like, oh, there's a crack.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep going. And I was like, and so I looked through what I would do if I was or what I would appreciate. And I was like, probably if I was still training, when we open, I need to give them 0 reasons not to bring me back.
That's right.
So I hit Justin up, I hit you up.
That's right.
And I was like, please train me. Like, let me be a dope boxer. A little bit because of Lonnie. I was like, Lonnie is so sick.
Yeah. Shout out Coach Lons.
Yeah, shout out to Coach Lons, because I looked at her and I was like, okay, I need to be undeniable like her.
Right.
So that's why I hit you up, and I was like, I'm going to do this. I can't work on the class. I mean, can kind of work on the class, but like not really. But the thing I can control is like I can get better at this and become an undeniable female coach.
Yeah.
That actually like knows what she's doing and knows what she's talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And to like coaches out there, I mean, I think that's just why I resonated with you, Coach Lowe, because it was that like understanding of like, I can't control all the variables here, right? But you were like, but what I can't control is like my time and my dedication to this craft. And I think, what ended up happening after that, right? And just kind of where you're at today and what you're getting ready to do, I think speaks volumes to that, right? So needless to say, obviously the pandemic happens. It happens much longer than we thought it did. Just a little bit. And so, but the whole time, Lo and I are meeting once, twice a week, right? We're doing boxing in the park at Pan Pacific Park. There's footage on our Instagrams from that period of time. And what an amazing time to me it was. Like, and I say amazing, and I hope that doesn't offend anybody, because I know it was a tough time for a lot of people too. But it was just this opportunity for so many people for like having the time to grow in some form of fashion, right? And so, just I commend you for that like period of time, because you really took ownership of that period of your life, and you were like you said, I'm not letting it go. There's a crack, and I'm squeezing through that shit. You know what I mean? So, so obviously you make it. We open up. You're back on the team. You go on to do just obviously amazing things there. But I think just based off time, a piece that I really want to get to now is that you've been coaching. You're currently working with the Nike studios, right? Talk to me a little bit about that experience with, whatever details you can share, but just obviously that's a really big brand now that you're kind of working with. So how does that feel? And like,
it's cool. And I think I look at it as such a big ad for me as like a trainer,
right?
To improve myself. That's kind of why I looked at the opportunity as one I wanted to take.
Right.
Because I was like, if there's an avenue for me to get better as a teacher, like I'm going to do it. And the heads behind the programming at Nike Studios is like some of the best heads in fitness, I think, and
absolutely.
So there's so much to be learned there. It is a pilot. So there's a lot of like things changing constantly, and seeing what I love about them is that they are really trying to educate the consumer of group fitness.
Yeah, I noticed that. I saw on their Instagram they were talking about periodization, right? And I thought that's something that like a lot of fitness companies think about,
right? But
never really is it forward facing. And I think what's great about that is that back in the day, I think a lot of companies assumed that consumers were not smart. Right. But we live in such an educated time now where the information is out there that I really respected that. Where they were like, listen, this is what we do, and we're going to tell you like how we lay it out. So I thought that was cool.
It is really cool. And I think there's absolutely room for it in the group fitness scene. I think to your point, like a lot of places maybe intend to do it, but they lose the commitment to it because it doesn't always breed immediate dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a long game for sure.
Yeah.
Before we run out of time.
Yeah.
The one thing I want to discuss right now is that you're preparing for a fight.
Yes.
And so this is monumentous in a lot of ways, right? Because I think you've really wanted to prepare for this. I think you've wanted to do this now for a while. We've obviously talked about it, and obviously our schedules just couldn't align for us to set it up. But that's, things happen for a reason. You and I both know that. But I'd like you to talk a little bit just about this preparation that you've had for the training. First of all, when is the fight? Because I think this episode comes out before then, and I want to make sure they know.
It's February 25th.
Okay.
Fingers crossed I get matched.
That's right. That's right. There's always that. Anytime you're talking about amateurs or smokers, it's rough sometimes. But
the date is February 25th.
Okay. And do you care to share where that location is?
Yeah, it's going to be at Grandpa's Boxing Gym. It's in the OC, off the Garden Grove exit. I don't know anything about the OC, so I couldn't give
for sure. Just follow Coach Lowe.
I just know the exit that I take.
That's right. Just follow Coach Lowe on Instagram, social media. She'll let you know where it's at. Yeah. But okay, talk to me a little bit through the process that you've gone through just to train for this fight. What has that consisted of for you?
Oh my gosh, it's a lot of training. Yeah. It's a lot of training. I've been working with Jeremiah.
Yeah, shout out Coach Jeremiah.
Yeah, shout out Coach Jeremiah and Coach Eddie.
That's right.
And it's been like a shift of, what the biggest thing is? A shift of mindset.
Yeah.
From being just kind of like boxing for the sake of boxing to like learning what I do.
Right.
And how to then apply. Like obviously sparring has gone up from, I was doing it periodically to like, pushing for 3 times a week as much as I can.
It's a regimen now.
Yeah, it's a regimen. And then on top of that, I also have been working with Coach Andy from Forge for performance training.
Okay. What kind of things are you doing like for performance? And you don't have to go into too much detail, but
it's everything is just geared towards like your ability to do your sport well. So like, if I everything is boxing specific for me. We do a lot of things with like a light med ball throwing, against a wall with my like backhand. Just
explosive movement.
Yeah, explosive movement. Depends on what phase you're in. He knows something that I'm working on is like power production, being able to sit on my punches. So he tailors a lot of the things that I'm doing to one, the timeline to when my fight is on like what phase I'm in.
Yep.
Phase 3 is really hard.
Yes.
And also the fact that like, I'm naturally fast, but I'm still learning to sit and throw.
Right.
So those things are being placed in how he's constructing my time with him.
Right.
Same thing with Jeremiah. It's always constantly like researching and watching, every time he literally watches my sparring and will text me at like 10 p.m. being like, okay, this is what I was thinking.
Hell yeah.
That you need to do. And I'm like, yes.
But that's who you want in your corner.
It's sick.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that is who you want in your corner. Like and when I say corner, I don't even mean the physical corner of the ring.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the life journey that you're on,
oh my
right?
gosh, yeah.
Because it sounds like your coaches are all moving you along with your own efforts in the same direction to a point that you're trying to get to.
Yes.
One thing
I do have to shout out also like my team, one of my teammates, Jade, who's like herself just like a super accomplished amateur boxer,
right.
Undefeated AA.
Yay, let's go.
She also has been really integral in this process, like and just like educating me on like what to expect, being this like crazy soundboard, because I'm sure anyone could imagine, but like I'm nervous.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
For sure.
I'm of course nervous.
Yeah. I mean, the unknown always brings that, right? At the end of the day, you know that you can do all the training, but you never know the outcome until it's game time.
I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Exactly, right? So
I hope I do the things I practice.
Right? And nervousness really, right, especially in that sense, is really just you thinking about all possibilities.
Yeah.
That's really what it is, right?
Yeah.
But you kind of touch on something super important, and if you don't want to touch on this, I'll cut it out. But you also took an extra step, which was sports psychology.
Yeah.
Right? Can you discuss a little bit, with whatever details you want, but like how important of a role has that played for you so far?
Integral.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if anyone considers it, but I do. Dance is a sport.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of things that I've carried with me from dancing that I didn't realize was going to come up in boxing, right. And it has.
Yeah.
And so I was reading a book called It Takes What It Takes, and that was a book written by a sports psychologist, and I was like, what is a sports psychologist?
Right.
And it just so happens that my boyfriend Derek has a family friend that's a sports psychologist, and I was having these like crazy episodes of like anxiety when I first decided really was like, okay, I'm fighting, okay, I'm gonna do this. I was having these crazy episodes where I was like really tearing myself down. He was like, he's like, I don't mean this in a bad way, but like, I think you should talk to someone that's not me. And I was like, fair.
Yeah.
So he put me in contact with, his name is Jamel.
Yeah.
And he's really helped me work through some of that, like performance anxiety, help come up with strategy, help, even down to like having hard conversations with setting boundaries on things I need to make myself feel successful in this process,
Absolutely.
And I think it seems like it's not needed, but I would recommend to anybody actually, if you do any sort of sport, it just helps you kind of like organize your thoughts.
Yep.
And also conquer what's going on that's limiting you from your high performance.
Yeah. I think to your point, and this doesn't even just apply to fitness, right? But just life, clarity is key, and I think if I had to take anything away from just kind of your story, and I hope people take this away and so much more, it's also the openness to keep learning. Like that seems like your journey, right?
It's gonna be my C's probably till I'm 90.
We're talking about from dance to like, I want to try ballet, like, you know what I mean? And I think the reason that's so important for many of us, myself included, right, is because at a certain juncture, it's hard to be the new person. It's hard to be the new guy or girl at the new club or the new, gym or whatever. And so at a certain point, especially when you're a fitness professional, right, that can be a little bit of a ego bruiser. But I think from the successful coaches that I've watched, it's the individuals that love the beginner mindset that seem to progress the most. You know what I mean? And I think you getting ready for this fight and preparing for that, and just doing all the amazing things that you've done, and I know you will continue to do, that I think to me is just kind of the shining like beacon of where us as fitness professionals need to aim to be, right? The constant beginner and willing to learn, because I've learned a lot from you, Lo. So, I just want you to know that. And obviously we're out of time a little bit, but with, I've had some amazing like conversations, and I think you and I can have a lot more.
Yes.
And so we will.
10 parts.
Yes, we will. Because I think that's what this is all about, right? And like that's been my whole purpose for this show, is making sure that we're enlightening coaches on what it takes to really propel yourself in this industry, right? Because it's not easy. You're going to go through these black swan events. You're going to go through the ups and downs, the trials and tribulations of any industry, but especially our industry as well, right? Because our industry relies on our connection with people. And so, that's why I can see us having 3 or 4 more conversations, because we talk a lot about it. And so we will set that up and have another one. I just want to thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
I truly appreciate it. And I can't wait to do it again. But with that being said, make sure you follow. What's the Instagram again?
Laurena22, Laurena 22.
All right. Follow on Instagram. Check out the fight. We're all wishing you luck. You know what I mean? I know you've been putting in the work. You're doing the damn thing. I've seen so much progression. So do you. You know what I mean? You know what time it is. Time to get busy. Yeah. Shout out to your coaches who are in your corner and helping you through. And, other than that, can't wait for you to be back, Lo. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.